I thought this would be a good growth thing for him. So I've been trying to mentor him a little bit along with. Have you met Mark Desjardins?
No.
Okay, Mark's the new president over there.
Oh, okay.
And his wife is Morrow. Previously, he was headmaster of the school that Ted Cruz, his kids go to.
Oh, wow.
And you'll remember Ted Cruz took his kids to Mexico.
Oh.
And he had to explain to Cruz that even though he was a senator and important, his children still had to be quarantined.
Morning, Edgar.
Good morning.
Edgar.
Good morning.
And then Edgar, your colleague, has the same name as you. He might want to just change his name. I can't tell.
Oh, that's right. Allan, your name is showing up as my Zoom name.
Oh, that's probably because I used the link you sent me this morning.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Really well for you.
People get to show up in person.
Yeah,
It might be.
might not be too deep.
Yeah. Awesome. Like she's on vacation. That's a cool little show there.
I've got my own box.
You've got your own box when the owl only has to divide by 3.
Morning, Sandy.
It's like your typical trail on Camp Elton.
Yeah.
She's got a beautiful background.
Morning.
Morning. We were just admiring your background, Sandy.
Oh.
What did you do?
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
It's up to you.
Just kneel down to 46 inches. That's the height in the
Good
restaurant.
morning.
Say,
Good morning. Good morning.
What's wrong here?
Morning, Ben.
Morning, Brett.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Same to you.
Morning, Wade.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Go to Virginia for a week, see some of her family, who all just have come down with COVID this week, so they're not gonna see any of them.
Morning, Carl. Morning, Catherine.
Yeah, they were
Morning.
canceled.
Morning.
Happy New Year,
We got
guys.
tickets to Leanne Morgan. Down the ocean, you know, go see UVA. go
Morning,
to
Terry.
Monticello. There's a lot to do there at this time of the year.
Morning.
Morning, Terry.
How are you? I was muted. I didn't realize it.
Yes, good to see you.
How
Sandy,
many-
I like your backdrop.
How many people are in the meeting physically?
Thanks.
6 or 7 of us here,
7?
something like that.
2, 4, 5. There's a couple of spirit.
Yeah, hi, Adrian.
Hi, good morning.
Any predictions on when we're going to be able to meet? Other than on
Yes.
Zoom?
Yes, in the future. That's right.
You have options,
That's
right?
too easy.
Morning, Diane.
There's
Morning. Oh, somebody else is connecting. Morning, Kelly. Oh, he's still connecting. Sorry.
Good morning. Happy New Year, everybody.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Here.
Morning, Simon. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet.
Simon, I was thinking about you recently. We need to chat about our Green Expo soon. I want to pick your brain on a couple ideas.
Okay, sure. Oh,
Morning,
you're
Deb.
doing them live now. You're doing them live and virtual, huh? Is that
Yeah.
new?
Yeah, no, we've been doing this for a few months, but
Oh. Green Business Committee is still virtual.
yeah. Morning, Deb. Morning, Kelly. Morning, Tony.
what do they call that? Stockholm. I'm supposed to be here.
All right. Oh, we got another person coming in.
Okay, guys, we're gonna call the meeting to order. I'm J.R. Phillips. I'm your new chair. I'm sorry for the downgrade from Haley. She was the best. We're gonna miss her, and it's okay to acknowledge that. I miss her as well. So happy New Year to everybody. We're glad that you were all able to make it today. Meeting is officially called to order. Is Catherine on the phone or on the Zoom? Yep, Catherine, can you lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. And Happy New Year, everyone. And GR, we are happy and thrilled to have you as our chair. All right, everybody, please rise. And ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Give me a second to catch up.
Okay, Brett needs a few minutes in 2022 to get caught up.
There we go.
Okay, he's ready. We're gonna start in the room here with introductions. We're gonna start to my right here.
I'm,
Jack.
okay. An actuary.
Tracy Carmichael.
Hold on, Tracy. There you go. Now, Tracy. Go.
Hi, I'm Tracy Carmichael.
J.R. Phillips with Phillips and Company Real Estate.
Morning, everybody. Brett Shantava, Carlsbad Chamber. Good to have you.
Mike Howes, Weiler Landy, Planning, Engineering, and Soils.
Okay, we're gonna jump online. Allan,
Allan Kosup with Caltrans. I'm the North County Corridor Director.
Mayor.
You're
You're muted, Mayor. Still muted, Your Honor. Just press the space bar.
I hit the wrong button. This whole screen went white. So Matt Hall, Mayor for the city of Carlsbad, one who knows very little about technology.
Edgar. Edgar.
Edgar Torres with Kimley Horn and Associates. We are the lead consultant for this comprehensive multimodal corridor plan.
Thank you, Edgar. Sandy.
Good morning, I'm Sandy Wilson. I'm the representative for Camp Pendleton.
Judy.
Good morning, I'm Judy Reese. I'm with the Carlsbad Republican Women Federate and the San Diego County Republican Party.
Wade.
Good morning, everyone. Wade Ashbrenner with Adeo Charter School 2.
Carl.
Hey, good morning and Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Carl Stryker. I'm with New Res Home Loans.
Catherine.
Good morning, everyone. Catherine Magana with WWM Financial.
Terry.
Terry Kaltenbaugh with Kibah Associates. Good morning, everyone.
Adrian.
Adrian Cisneros Seligman with Supervisor Jim Desmond's office.
Kelly.
I'm Kelly Batten with the BIA.
Deb.
Good morning, I'm Deb Beto from your Ops Manager.
Anthony.
Good morning, Anthony Sena. I'm a mobile notary, 24/7. Take care of your personal as well as your business notary needs.
Thank you, Anthony. Ben.
Good morning, Ben Haddad with California Strategies or Government Relations.
Cody.
Good morning. I'm Cody Patterson, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for your newest county supervisor, Tara Lawson-Reamer.
Thank you. John.
John Osborne, Director of External Affairs for 18.
Chuck.
Hey, Happy New Year, everybody. Chuck Barrett's Cloud for Salesforce Consulting.
Hey, Chuck. Simon.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Simon Friedman with the Electric Vehicle Association of San Diego on a mission to get all of you driving electric vehicles.
Thank you. Jason.
Good morning, everybody. Jason Haber, City of Carlsbad, City Manager's Office.
Jason. Where are we? Diane.
Good morning, Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Diane Prue with Grand Pacific Resorts.
Thank you. Mario.
Good morning, all. I'm with Caltrans as an assistant project manager.
Thanks, Mario. Don. Hey, Don, are you able to unmute Mr. Shep? Well, Don Shep is with us. He's just temporarily muted. We're going to jump over to Aaron. Mr. Bizak.
Good morning, everyone. Aaron Bizak, Tri-City Medical Center.
Thank you. I think we've gotten everybody. Is there anyone that we've missed that wanted to introduce themselves? All right. Well, thanks again for being here and Happy New Year's. We are going to look for a motion to approve the minutes. I'm hoping you've all spent your holidays reading over the minutes.
So moved.
So moved. That's Terry with the first. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Jack with the second. Any further discussion? I can't imagine there is on this wonderful Wednesday. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? No, and I don't believe we have abstentions on the minutes, right? So, okay. Thank you, thank you. We're gonna jump right into new business. You need to cue something up here. We're gonna jump to Allan Kosup with Caltrans. And we sharing screens or?
I think you guys had a presentation, but if you want to run it from there, and I can just do next slide. If not, we can share it here, no problem.
I don't think I was given the presentation. I don't believe, was I? Oh, there, Edgar's got it.
Edgar's got it.
Perfect.
Take it away, Allan.
All right. Well, good morning, and thank you very much for having us. As I mentioned, I'm Allan Kosup, North County Corridor Director for Caltrans. Long title. Basically, it means I'm your counterpart, your center point for transportation, regional transportation in North County. So my team has been responsible for construction of I-5 through Encinitas and Carlsbad that's currently ongoing. We built SR 76 through Oceanside and the county, connecting it to 15 a few years ago. And now my team is focused on the 78 corridor and in revisioning what transportation looks like in this corridor. And it's important, when we talk about this, we're sort of almost a little bit back at square one in terms of planning, right? On 76 and 5, we went through that process of planning, environmentally clearing, and then building. And we're to that point now in this, what I call the 78 corridor. But, we've learned a lot over the last 10 or 15 years in terms of how to better plan transportation. And, the turn of the century, we were still thinking about transportation in a modal stovepipe, right? So Caltrans would plan state highways, and we had NCTD doing things on Sprinter. Cities were working on city streets. We had Sandag overseeing it all. But it was really a stovepiped operation, and rarely we planned those facilities in concert. And so I think over the last 15 years, in part to a lot of the things that we learned on NCC, where we planned both the rail and the freeway together, and the active transportation and the environmental restoration. We did all that under one plan. And really that idea has taken hold throughout the state. And we now start the process with this thing called the Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. And those are plans developed in a partnership with Sandag and Caltrans, as well as all the local agencies in a corridor. And this exhibit really sort of highlights, the theory, the vision behind it. It's to take each one of the transportation agencies, whether it's a federal agency, state agency, a city, the region in Sandag. Each of us, have our visions for the future, for, getting between now and 2040, 2050, with population growth and employment growth and changes in demographics. We all have our vision, but it's really difficult to build things that way, and it's not very effective. And so the CMCP brings those visions together and those parties together to come up with a comprehensive playbook for a subregion over the next 30 plus years. And ultimately that playbook has your technology improvements, your highway improvements, your transit improvements, but the idea is to put them together in an integrated fashion, right? People do not travel on modes, they travel door to door, right? They're interested in how do I get from my house to my job, and they may take several system elements in order to get there: city street, freeway, transit, whatnot. And really the idea here is to plan around those trips instead of planning around the modes, or instead of planning at a particular location. So next slide. So Sandag a couple years ago programmed 5 funds to do 5 CMCPs throughout the region. And the 78 is corridor, and we call it the North County corridor because it's a lot bigger, right? The corridor is a lot bigger than just the highway. I think 78's a lot what people maybe associate the region or the subregion with from a transportation facility perspective. But it's important that these really are sub-regional studies. And this exhibit just shows you the other subregions that are in this process currently. So as I said, there's 5 of them ongoing. Next slide. So as we get into details on this subregion, this exhibit shows sort of the extent. So it's really all of the cities, Oceanside, Carlsbad, Vista, San Marcos, a little bit of the county, Escondido, and it includes, the major regional transportation system elements such as Sprinter, 76, 78, but also the major arterials. Now there was, as I mentioned early, earlier, we do have a similar study along the I-5 corridor, basically from Camp Pendleton all the way down to UCSD. So, these studies do overlap, and it's important that these, just like the regional transportation plan that, the region just wrapped up, transportation planning is iterative. It's not one and done. Things are constantly changing. Population projections are changing. The way people travel, technology is changing. We can't, accurately predict all those, and COVID is certainly a great example of that. And so it's important that we're constantly reevaluating these plans. Next slide. So the process and as it relates to the North County regional plan, or the CMCP for North County, it's a collaborative process. We have a number of working groups. We have a technical working group with the cities and their staffs. We have a stakeholders working group, and then we've done a number of community outreaches as it relates to public surveys and workshops, and that continues through the CMCP process. We started about probably 18 months ago with some early listening tours, and we're hoping to wrap up by middle of 22. So we're 60-70% complete. Next slide. And we talked about that early listening tour. This image just represents a lot of the things we heard. And I don't think there's any surprises here, but obviously from a symptom standpoint, or a location standpoint, things like 578 always come up. When are we going to fix that? When can we fix or how can we connect the coastal rail trail to the coast? How do we make the arterials run better? That we don't have many north-south alternatives, and we really rely on the arterials in this subregion. How do we make that work better, more effectively? A lot of concerns and questions about integration of the general plans with the regional plans, things like mobility hubs. And so we heard that 12, 18 months ago. And again, along with a lot of site-specific issues and concerns. And so CMCP hopefully works through that and lays out a framework to deal with those issues. Next slide. So, as we went out, some of the conclusions that we wanted to build on, opportunities and constraints sort of approach, really positive things that we can build on is, and I think maybe this is could be a surprise to people who live outside the North County subregion, is how cohesive and self-contained this area really is. And when we look at trips, just from a mobility standpoint, 70 to 80% of the trips, start and end in that subregion. So I think a lot of folks maybe outside still think of the subregion to some extent as a suburb, and people are commuting, into UTC or downtown or whatnot. And a lot of this CMCP needs to be data driven, right? So we look at a lot of data coming from cell phones and so forth. They're confidential. They're, you don't get the driver information, but you understand where the cell phones are moving around the subregion. Really helpful to understand patterns. This is really a new opportunity for us. And that's how we know the length of trips. The length of trips in this subregion are actually shorter than they are in the rest of the county in many ways. So these are all things that we can build on in terms of, the next generation of transportation in this. How do we support that? We notice a lot of continuity among the agencies in the subregion, a lot of support for what we're doing, a lot of support for the future. A lot of interest in pushing technology forward and doing some new things. So that's great. From a practical boots on the ground, those connections from this subregion to the bigger regional network are always strange, just because there aren't many connection points, right? So 578, Sprinter to Coaster, 1578, those locations are a challenge. The topography, limits sort of connectivity in the subregion. So again, it strains the elements that are there. The existing land use, spread out, difficult to connect. And then, and as I said before, sort of limited north-south alternatives. So that's just kind of a high level, what we saw from our first listening tours. Next slide. So with that, the group that's working on it really looked at what do we want if this vision is to succeed and improve mobility in the subregion, what would be a success? And these goals really try to communicate that at a fairly high level. And this idea of improving connections between the communities, right? Because again, back to that 70 to 80% of the travel stay in the subregion. It isn't really necessarily connecting Escondido and Oceanside with the Sprinter. There may be more bang for our buck, and there's more demand and more desire for shorter trips, Oceanside to Vista or Carlsbad to Vista. So thinking about, again, those trips, building a foundation for the future while solving today's problems, right? That's probably one of the biggest challenges for transportation today. Where is transportation headed? What are the modes of the future? We probably will never always know the total answer of that. So how do we build for tomorrow and still address today's needs? Shift towards cleaner transportation, right? We have a number of state, federal mandates that we need to work with regarding vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gases. And then lastly, this idea of improving a traveler experience for all, right? People spend way too much time traveling, whether that's on the bus, Sprinter vehicle. They're stuck waiting for their transportation. They're stuck in congestion. How do we improve the experience for everyone? So those are kind of the overall goals of this plan. Next slide. And so the way that, the tools in the toolbox, so to speak, are these layers and the, modes, such as, we could invest in more Sprinter. We could invest in managed lanes on the 78. We could invest in arterials, technology, more bus service. And, again, we don't want to do those in isolation. We don't want just a series of 400 projects. We want to really, if you thought about this as a cake, you would want to slice the cake so that you bring all of these solutions to a location, to a challenge, right? So if we're looking at, the connection problem of how do we get east-west travelers to the north-south facilities, you're not just looking at more pavement in a particular area. You want to look at all of these layers and say, how can I bring solutions in that location that get us there? And that's kind of where we are now. Next slide. So I think I was going to say, I think it's animated. So why don't we just click through to the end, maybe? So, the first few months was really trying to understand the mobility challenges in the corridor. And then concurrently, we were doing a lot of pattern analysis with that cell phone information and a lot of other tools in the toolbox that provide us traveler information. And now we're, identifying the projects that are going to solve that in those layers. But really, you end up with 400 or 500 projects, right? And you could probably go even deeper and get more projects. And so, how do you blend that into a compelling vision? And where should we invest first, right? All 400 or 500 projects have great improvement, and they all have their advocates. And so, how do we put that together in a meaningful benefit to the people who live here? And this slide sort of communicates where we're proposing to put our early investments in transportation. And the blobs really are sort of those, activity centers, if you would. Some folks call them mobility hubs, lots of different ideas, but that's where, 60, 70% of the transportation needs are in those blobs. And so they might be employment zones, they might be heavy, residential zones or universities. And so, and those are also areas that all the cities have identified for future growth, future densification. Lots of good urban planning is happening in those areas. So how does transportation prepare for that and also facilitate that, right? And then, so the yellow lines are really those connections. We talk about connecting the communities. Well, those are the facilities that have been doing it. Those are our workhorses. So how do we make those more efficient and carry more people without necessarily widening them, right? We don't have room to widen those, and that's not really probably a prudent approach in those arterials. So, how do we double down on some other strategies? And then, of course, we've got the red, which is the regional system that we're trying to connect to. So, that's those strategic anchors are where you'll see the plan propose a lot of investment in those layers. Next slide. An example of that, right? An example of one of those layers is those arterials, and how do we make those smart arterials? How do we use technology to make them more efficient? Adaptive signals, smart signals are a component of that solution, right? But this exhibit shows you how many intersections we truly have, right? And adaptive signals are interesting because people think of them as, green time and moving cars faster, but there's a lot of other opportunities with those adaptive signals and smart signals as it relates to safety for bikes and peds. You can give more green time, right? The signal can sense if someone's going to run the red light. And put up warnings. So we're making great progress in some of those things beyond just connecting the signals. And so this exhibit kind of shows, how we would start deploying those and where we would put our focus. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, the challenge is, just the vastness of the mobility challenge, right? This subregion's got lots of areas that we could focus on and get improvement, but we don't have funds to do it all, in year one. And so we talked about those areas of focus, but remember, this plan is a 30+ year plan. And so how do we bundle certain projects in certain areas in the first 3 to 5 years? And the importance there is, from my perspective, I don't like a plan that just sits on the shelf, right? There's no sense in that. The only good plan is one that we actually implement something out of, and we use that as a driving force to build stuff. And now those early action bundles will be the bundles that we can compete for funding. And that's really the bottom line of the plan, is how do we put ourselves in a good position in this subregion to compete for transportation money, whether it be regional money, whether it be federal money, right? We have a new federal transportation bill. And a lot of the things this region is working on and the state of California is working on aligns extremely well with the federal bill. But we just got to, get in there and make a compelling case, and the CMCP will help us do that. So, and that's sort of where we are. I said we're 60 to 70%. We think we have a pretty good handle on the set of projects and improvements, but now we're in the bundling phase. Next slide. I think our last slide. And so mentioned that we're working on the phasing and bundling, and then we need to work with the modeling. There's a lot of transportation models out there to see, okay, if we build these projects, what improvements do we get? What improvements do we get on carrying capacity, reducing VMT, reducing delay? What's the benefit of that projects? And that takes a lot of computer horsepower. That'll be happening in the next couple of months, hopefully. And then in spring, this is an ongoing engagement. As I said, we have the technical working group with the cities and NCTD. We had one public workshop earlier in 2021. We'll have another this spring, sort of bringing out some of the stuff you're seeing here with a little more detail, and get the public's input, with the idea of having a draft and the final in spring and early summer. and then chase funds. So that's kind of a highlight of where the plan is. And I will open it up to questions.
All right, thank you, Alan. I think we do have a couple questions in the chat to start with. Brett, do you want to take that?
Alan, the first question is, what considerations given to future Palomar Airport growth and needs for traffic mitigation on Palomar Port Road in regards to that?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things we quickly identified was that the San Marcos Boulevard from 78 all the way to Palomar Airport Road really is a big workhorse on in transportation here. And one of the reasons this is because the regional facilities don't really align well geographically with the blobs. That kind of gets back to the historic location of 78 and the Sprinter. So you have those big work, those employment sites down there in Carlsbad, but 78 is, 5 miles away. You have the big employment center of Camp Pendleton, but 78 is 5 miles away. Sprinter, 3 miles away. So again, that's why we need to invest in those arterials like Palomar and San Marcos. So we have that as a major corridor and one of our first recommended areas of focus. And again, looking at the layers, that could be more high frequency transit service in the corridor, the smart arterial technology we could bring to the corridor. So lots going on there.
Thank you, Alan. Next.
Next question was, how does the SANDAG approved $160 billion plan incorporate these North County objectives that you're sharing with us today?
So CMCPs are not separate or outside of the regional planning process. They're part of the regional planning processes. So the RTP gets redone every 4 years by law in all the counties. And these CMCPs do the detailed work that you can't get done in the RTP. And they influence or they drive the next series of RTPs. So, what you learn here then becomes the foundation for the next RTP. That said, there's a lot of consistency between. There's really not much that's inconsistent that I can think of off the top of my head. There's more information and maybe more improvements in this plan as it relates to some of the arterial improvements. So again, SANDAG is part of this team developing the CMCP. So it's very connected. It's very collaborative that way.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, the RTP is sort of, by their nature, they're sort of challenged because they have to plan for the entire region. And to do that in the level of detail in these subregions is difficult. So that's why you make this additional investment to zoom in on these subregions.
All right, thank you. Mayor Hall?
Yes, Alan, and thank you. And I really appreciate all the work you've done over the years. And one of the things that I've noticed is that transit, as we know it today, is going to change drastically over the next 3 to 15 years with the autonomous vehicle. And it seems like, in any reports that I've seen, there's little or no discussion about the autonomous vehicle and how that will totally change how we travel. So what would your comment be to that?
No, I totally agree that technology like that is a huge game changer, and this plan is contemplating that. And a good example of that, one of the ways that can be a game changer is just how many cars and people you can carry on a freeway. The spacing between cars is the limitation right now. So we carry probably 2,000 cars an hour on 78 per lane if we're lucky. And half the time there's an accident or someone runs out of gas, which reduces the carrying capacity of the freeway in half at least. Automated highways could reduce the spacing by half. Automated highways could reduce the propensity for accidents. So it makes it a much more consistent and reliable trip. And it also carries more folks. I mean, that is, in some ways, that could be a curse or a blessing, right? Because eventually these people have to get off the freeway. And so, you know, there's a lot going on there with the automated highway system. And it's definitely coming. I think the big question mark with it is when. There's a lot of public policy issues related to insurance and those kind of things, liabilities that go beyond the technology itself. And so, you know, it's probably coming. What we hear a little bit is it's coming maybe a little bit later than maybe we anticipated 5 years ago, but it's definitely coming. And we are, you know, again, we said this is a 40-year plan. So we are factoring that into the mid to late years, and it's affecting how we would recommend spending money so that we don't build things that are obsolete.
All right, we have another question in the chat.
Another question in the chat is, I understand the need for rapid transit, but the idea of being taxed on a per mile basis to drive my car to support rapid transit does not sit well. How does Sandag justify that?
So first of all, I'm Caltrans, not Sandag, so we'll just clarify that. You know, there's a lot of challenges. Funding transportation has always been a huge challenge. So we have a lot more good ideas than we have money. And so how do you close that gap is a policy question that has been grappled with for years. And we'll continue to be grappled with. And no one's going to like raising money to build these great ideas. And I don't necessarily have an opinion on the best way to raise money, but the gap does exist. So that's kind of one point. And second point is, you know, there's other things like 15 express lanes. 15 express lanes run very well for us because they're a reliable trip. We use the pricing feature to get the optimal number of people on the one lane. So the idea being, if it's important to get there on time, you have an option to get there on time. That's how I-15 express lanes work. I-5 carpool lanes don't work that way because first of all, we have a ton of violators and the HOV lanes are probably just as slow as the general purpose lanes. And so if you need to get home on time, you can't do it. You have no option. And express lanes are just a different way of managing the limited capacity that you have. And so I'm a big proponent of express lanes because I think they've worked extremely well for us on I-15. So I don't know if that quite answers the question, but you know, there's a lot in there as it relates to charging for usage of the freeway.
So we have another question from Ben.
Yeah, good morning, Allan. Thanks. Just like the mayor said, thank you for all your years of service to the region. You do great work. I know it's hard stuff, but I just had a general question, a sort of more regional question. You mentioned 5 of these CMCPs, and I'm just wondering, are they all kind of in the same stages of development? Are they all going to kind of end up at the same time coming out with a final plan, or are they in different stages of public input and so forth?
They all started about the same time. The goal is that they'll all be wrapped up in 2022. I think they'll be coming out to the public in slightly different times in 2022. I would say of the group, ours is probably the farthest ahead for different reasons. I mentioned the modeling power needed to do some of the forecasts. That, you know, the focus had been on the RTP, getting that done. And now the focus is shifting to the CMCP. So some of these have been waiting for a couple months to try to get to that computer time. And hopefully that'll be freeing up here in the next couple months.
Thanks.
One more in the chat room, and then we're going to turn to a new subject.
We've got people in the room.
The widening from I-5 from Encinitas to Oceanside, do we know when that will be complete?
That's my favorite topic. Yeah, you're coming to the right guy. So the good news is that we will have the carpool lane, I-5 carpool lane from Loma Santa Fe to Palomar Airport Road, open by the end of this February. So in just a couple of months. This time of year, we face kind of weather challenges and rain. There's certain things that can't be done when it's moist, such as the final lift of AC or striping. And I think you guys may have seen some of the orange stripe that we had done out in Carlsbad, North Carlsbad, and we had some problems with some of the moisture there. So we do fight the weather this time of year, but if all goes well for us, we'll be open to Palomar by February, say March 1st. And then that second section from Palomar Airport Road to 78, we just broke ground on that like 2 months ago. I would hope to have it open to the traveling public by sort of early 23, so maybe 12, 13 months from now. And then there's some cleanup projects that we have in the corridor, some new technology that we want to install, but that hopefully, and maybe some additional auxiliary lanes that will be under construction. But for the most part, the major construction will be done by the end of the year.
And we do have a few questions in the room. Jack?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think this through, so that's part of why I didn't ask a question, but it seems to me that there are two aspects. One is the theory, the mathematical optimization of traffic flows, and you're talking about your modeling, and that also requires you to anticipate changes in modalities that may come about as transportation is clearly changing and changing very rapidly. And it seems to me that that should precede the political discussion. We've got political discussion going on. All of this is going to be going on continuously, so that the plan may be done in 2024, but it'll be obsolete as soon as it's there. And I think what we want to avoid is something you alluded to, where we built the corridor along 78 for both public transit and for car transit, while the need is along the Palomar Airport Road corridor, that corridor. And now we're trying to catch up with that. We want to be sure that the modeling is done carefully enough and that the theory isn't, but so that everybody understands it, so that we optimize the result for the future. And I'm just wondering how you're managing that intersection of the political opinion, which tends to be rooted in today's thinking, with the theoretical modeling to optimize for tomorrow.
I mean, that is probably the challenge of our profession, right? I would say that we're a lot better at it than we were not just a few years ago, and really the land use that the cities do drives so much of that future. And we can't move enough people. The area continues to grow, and that's a great thing. We want to be competitive for jobs, and this job and the whole Innovate 78 corridor, that's something we should be proud of and build on. But we can't do it with the old-fashioned sort of SOEB approach, single occupant vehicle. We just don't have enough room. There's not enough political will or money to do the widening, even if we could. So it's really about moving more people in the facilities that we have. How do we increase the throughput? And a lot of that relies on where people live, and all the cities are all rowing in the same direction, right? And we're seeing a lot of great developments that are much more attuned to that and much more easy to serve with transportation. And I think where we've made headway is before, like Caltrans really wouldn't have been in tune with that. We would have just been working on the symptoms that we see on the highway and not necessarily trying to facilitate or support that development with transportation that serves those developments. And that's kind of where we're turning, the ship is turning, right? It's trying to figure out, okay, via these plans, where could we invest that would actually contribute to the right long-term shift. And it's tacking left and right. We're not going to get it right the first time for sure, but it's better than what we've done. So I think this constant communication with groups like this in the city keep influencing that conversation. And so it's a balance, maybe is the best I can say, and that we need to just keep talking.
We're gonna finish up with one more question and then we're gonna have to move on. John Osborne.
Yeah, thanks, JR. And so Alan, couple questions in my mind is, I don't know to what extent Caltrans gets involved with the last mile problem. But it seems to me that, our biggest challenge is getting, we build massive mass transit projects, and then we don't have a last mile solution to get people onto those modes of transportation and then out to their work or their home. So that's one concern. And then the other is, as we look at putting more and more people into mass transit solutions, we've seen with the pandemic what that does with putting a lot of people in close space together. And I think that needs to be factored into the equation because, viruses of this nature are not going away. They're only becoming more prevalent in the last 20 years. And, obviously COVID was a game changer, but, SARS and other things like that have necessitated mask wearing, things like that. So I just wondering to what extent Caltrans gets involved with last mile solutions, and then how you view the overall pandemic situations and propensities in terms of transportation.
So over the last 10 years, the first mile, last mile has become a much bigger focus. And we have lots of good examples of that. I have a job right now in Mission Bay, looking at 4 places, Balboa, Claremont, SeaWorld, connecting to the new LRT, right? Where the freeway acted as the barrier for getting people from Pacific Beach to those stations, those brand new stations. And so now we're actively working on improvements to get that done. On NCC, right? What started as a simple carpool lane job, the project that you see out there now has 7 or 8 miles of brand new Class 1 bike path, and based on specific connectivity, right? Connectivity that wasn't there. It's not just an isolated bike path. It's now built specifically to connect Solana Beach to Cardiff. Built to access the rail station at Cardiff. We've done a number of first mile, last mile improvements at UTC and Genesee and Sorrento Valley. Before the Genesee, the freeway job at Genesee, you couldn't connect from the Sorrento Valley transit station to the university. That project included 3 miles of Class 1 with large bridges to make that connection for bike and peds. So, a lot of focus right now on first and last mile, and a lot of focus in this plan on first and last mile. But it's definitely a work in progress. We could certainly do more. As it relates to viruses, probably not a whole lot in terms of how we think about transportation. It's not necessarily one of our fortes yet, probably something we're all learning. So I would say it's not factoring in directly. That said, we are very closely monitoring the patterns that are resulting from COVID and how they are changing the commute patterns morning and night. And a lot of interesting things coming on there, things that we don't really know totally the answer, like are people now more willing to move farther away because they can telecommute, because they can afford more housing that way. That's counterintuitive to what we want them to do. But those are trends we're watching that we would not have necessarily thought about prior to COVID.
Thank you, Alan. That's a wonderful presentation. Really easy to understand, great data, just a great presentation. It really was easy to take in. And I think you made it clear to all of us here at the chamber that we are really important here as an entity in a sub-region that runs 80%, give or take, autonomously from the rest of the region. We don't really interact as much, and we're going to have to be one of the louder voices to help our communities and our municipal leaders get what's important for all of us into the ears of Caltrans and Sandag and the other leadership throughout the region. So thank you. Again, just wonderful presentation. We're going to move on to Mayor Hall, Carlsbad 2022. If he doesn't have a white screen and his mute button is off, we're good to go.
Well, thank you everyone for giving me an opportunity to speak today. And again, I want to thank Allan. What happens not only in Carlsbad, but Carlsbad is part of the region. And so there has to be a collaboration and a working relationship through many different entities in order for all of us to have the quality of life that we really know and appreciate. And also with Carlsbad, it's well known that the 78 corridor and Innovate 78, where we have a strong working relationship with the 5 mayors along that corridor also. And so I'm going to hit some quick highlights because I think questions are probably more important than what I could talk about for the next hour and a half. So right now, just a quick snapshot of where we're at as a city and what's of importance to us. I think, might be a little prejudice is how I'm going to look at it at the moment, but Carlsbad, one of the things that's unique about Carlsbad is our growth management plan, which was voted on in '86 and fully implemented in 1994, but it hasn't been updated such as the general plan has over the years. And so we find ourselves today with a population of 115, 118,000, with a cap, an original cap of 135,000. It's really time to step back and look, what did we do right? What would we like to change? What would we like to add? So that's going to be on the forefront as we move into this next year in trying to bring a committee together, such as we've done in the past in 1985 and around 2008, 2009 with EC3, to get not just special interest, but to get the overall view of the community of what do you want to look like in 2050. And some of the unique factors about growth management is that the plan is really, our growth management plan is really unique onto Carlsbad. And it's how we built that relationship or partnership with the development community. And Carlsbad is very lucky in the fact that the development community probably built 60 to 80% of the infrastructure as we know it today. When I say that, it's everything from roads to libraries, water, sewer, all the infrastructure had to be put in place on or before builders were allowed to develop. So I look forward to, what are some of the things that some of the things that have changed have been like the state of California and some of the new laws where no longer can you have a growth cap. So how are we going to deal with that? Also, since 2008, we've been looking at our coastline, most in particular from Leucadia all the way up to Terramar or the power plant, with the opportunity that we could create a 3.5-mile linear park, while at the same time trying to take care of beach erosion and other things. So that's one of the things that we never discussed at the original growth management, but one of the things that we found that is a huge opportunity as we go into the future. Another thing that we've discussed in the past, it's been on our goals list probably since 2010, but still we need to continue pushing forward, is perhaps the trenching through the village. And safety factor in that alone is huge, not to mention when you do the business plan on that over the next 35 to 50 years, it increases the land values west of the train tracks by almost $1 billion. So it has a lot of good opportunity there also. And moving on from that, we have one of the things that's most important, especially in and around the village and then down around Poinsettia, has been the homeless and how we've dealt with that issue. And I know this is probably one of the toughest issues, not only for Carlsbad, but for almost every city in the state of California. And I think, just from my observation, and I drove around the village just as recently as yesterday, I do think we're starting to make headway, but this is going to be a long road. And it's going to take the help of the county and our state legislators to give us all the tools we need in order to really address the root of the issue. And that's people that are on the street that are in a state of mind where they're a danger to themselves as well as a danger to the community. And how do we work with them to try and get them back into the mainstream of society. And I think we are making headway there. Other areas that I think is of importance is we've realized that along Cannon, west of I-5, there was a need for a fire station, and we've made that the highest priority. And as soon as we finish the one at La Costa, we'll be moving there to work on that. Some of the other things that I think are of importance is the fact that what was just said is how the business community interacts with not only the city to make sure that their needs are clearly understood, but also with the region. And that includes SANDAG, the San Diego County Water Authority, and other agencies such as that, because the world is changing. And we need, as a business, I think, community, need to have a voice there. And I think as an example, through the past year in COVID, how David Graham and Matt Sanford and others have worked with Brett and Christine Davis of the Merchants Association to make sure that what we do as a city is in alignment with your thoughts and your needs. And that I think we need to work on and even take that even more to another level. And I think that's been very productive. One of the things that is of interest to me is part of the prior conversation is when we think about what do mobility hubs look like and what is our mode of transportation over the future. And I think that really needs to have a more of an in-depth conversation with the community at large. It's been my observation that a lot of the conversation that's taken place up until today has been more of a special interest versus the community at large. And I think we saw that at Sandag when right at the last minute, the 4.5 cent per mile tax was we kind of hit the pause button on that. And again, that was the community speaking up at the last minute once that people became aware of that. Water, I will say this, that, and you can thank our former mayor, Bud Lewis, the San Diego region, when it comes to water, we are in a very reliable situation. And even till today, we still have all the water we need. And that's based off studies that we have the need. We have cover our need for at least 3 years into the future. Water is going to change though. The world is changing. Fallbrook and Rainbow are wanting to step off of the San Diego County Water Authority and move to Riverside. That could have a cost impact to us, as well as the city of San Diego is wanting to go to their pure water project, where they're going to recycle 100% of their effluent into reuse. And they right now purchase a very large amount of the water that is used here in the county. So that will have some impacts as we move forward. So I'm going to leave it right there. That's a quick overview, and allow people to ask whatever questions they want. And if I can't answer them, Jason Habert's sitting over there listening closely. He'll be able to cover for me.
Do we have any questions for Mayor Hall or Jason? Thank you, Mayor. That was fantastic. So any questions for the mayor or Jason?
I have a comment.
We have a comment from Jack.
Okay. I don't think that the idea, I know that they purify the water totally, but I don't think the idea of recycling that San Diego seems to be thinking about will be popular in Carlsbad.
Well said. And again, going back, and I'm giving credit to Mayor Lewis, we have spent over $90 million on our recycled water projects throughout since the early 90s. And that represents a huge amount of our water needs. So we have been on the forefront with that and desal, and the city itself is also well positioned in our water needs also. So.
All right, Mayor, Jason, thank you guys for everything. Mayor, thanks for all your service and being so accessible to us. So we really appreciate that. We really, really do.
And John's got his hand up. I don't know if you want to recognize him or not.
Sleeping on the job here. John?
Yeah, Mayor, something you said triggered an idea or a thought. you mentioned not hearing so much from the community at large as hearing from special interest groups. And I'm wondering if the city could do some polling on, some of these topics and get a sense of what the general public or the city feels about various issues, as opposed to just hearing from special interest groups at a city council meeting. Because I think the message from the community at large tends to get biased in favor of the groups that show up at city council meetings or SANDAG meetings and that sort of thing.
And you're correct, John. And over the years, we have done an annual, now I think Jason, it's a semi-annual survey of the community as to, how we're doing in different areas of work and what is the needs of the community. And I think during COVID, we really tried to reach out to the business community, because as council members, we have a lot of great ideas, but our ideas don't necessarily match what is needed, especially like in the village. We built quite a close working relationship, and hopefully that relationship continues. I think one of the challenges that SANDAG did, they did a lot of surveying in the 5 big moves, but in past times they did surveys with third-party vendors to go out and really try and get to the heart of the community. And that didn't happen this time. And I think we saw the outcome of that right at the very end. So,
Mayor, we have a question in the chat. When will redistricting be complete?
okay, Jason, that one's yours. Is it March?
That's a great question. And honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. We can certainly look into that and get that answer.
And I know our date was late, and I've heard the date before, but I believe it's March or 1st of April. It's still a ways away.
I believe in one of our meetings last summer, late summer, we were told sometime in March. So I think Mayor is spot on what we had heard. Okay, so I think with no more questions for the mayor, we'll thank Mayor Hall again, and we're going to move on to our finalized committee goals for 2022, and I'm going to turn it over to Brett.
Yeah, so last month we updated our goals for the new year, and so I took last year's goals and implemented as best I could the things that I heard from our meeting last month, and I sent those out with this packet, and those here in the room have them. The only thing I changed on my own was under the first section. When we met last month, the redistricting for the county supervisors had not yet been completed, so we did not realize that our supervisor for the city of Carlsbad was changing. And so it has changed, and we do have a representative here on the call with us today, thankfully, for County Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer. But I added inviting her as a guest to one of these meetings, since she is now our representative for the city of Carlsbad. And I have already actually reached out to her, and we're in the process of trying to get her scheduled to join us for an upcoming meeting. But other than that, everything else is just things that I took in from our meeting last month. And just if there's no, corrections or objections, we just want to go ahead and bless these as our goals for the year, and move on.
I think Tracy just pointed out that we probably want to add Keith Blackburn to that list to reach out to, since he's running for mayor, or have we?
Well, that election's, it's not
this year.
Yeah, and because we had him he was on our goals for last year, and he came and visited us last year. So yep. You're welcome.
Okay. So we need a motion. I'm looking for a motion to approve these goals for our committee for 2022.
I'll move that.
We have a first from Jack. Can I find a second?
I'll second it. Wade will second it.
With the second, I'm not sensing any more communication here or discussion. With that in mind, can we all raise our right hand in favor, or all those in favor say aye? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? And is there anyone feeling they need to abstain? No abstentions. Okay, that motion passes. Okay, Jason Haber, we're going to jump into a City of Carlsbad with Jason.
And good morning again, everybody. I just did put in the chat some information updating on redistricting, which will tell you that there's an upcoming meeting on January 13th with another hearing planned in mid-February rather. And then the deadline to choose a map for redistricting is April 17th. So that independent redistricting commission will proceed with their process and have to be finalized by middle of April. So I'll leave that there. And I'll just give you a preview on a couple items upcoming on council agendas, actually a handful, I guess. We have a meeting next Tuesday, the 11th. A few items of interest. We will be having a public hearing on new water and wastewater rates. You might all be interested in. We also have an item coming before the council to consider a proposal that the city of Oceanside is considering for some sand retention improvements. They're looking at proceeding with design on a series of rock groins to retain sand in the Oceanside area. We'll be considering the impact of that on Carlsbad and possibly taking a position relative to that pursuit. We'll also be getting a legislative update, end of year report from our state lobbyists, looking at updates to the city's legislative platform, and then some of the legislative priorities, sponsorship proposals, and budget requests that we'll be pursuing in the coming year. And also the council will be going through their reorganization, looking at various regional committee assignments and commission assignments that they are assigned to. So that's coming up on the 11th, and then a preview on the 18th. A couple items, a couple key reports relative to regional marketing and economic development. We'll be getting an update from Visit Carlsbad and Innovate 78, update on their programs. Also looking, the city has been undertaking new work in the DEI space. And so we have our city DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee updating on their work plan for the coming year. And finally, an update from the Clean Energy Alliance CEO, Barb Boswell, giving an update on how things are going with the Clean Energy Alliance Community Choice Aggregation Program, and an update on their rates for the coming year. Also, several of the things that the mayor alluded to are being addressed in an ongoing strategic planning work that the city council is undertaking. They did have their first meeting on that front last month, and we'll be pursuing that through the budget process, finalizing that sometime in the June-July timeframe. So look for some public engagement opportunities on city strategic planning work that's ongoing. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jason. I don't see any questions for Jason. No hands are up, nothing in the chat. Thank you very much, Jason. We're going to transition to County Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer, Cody Patterson. But before we do, we wanted to thank Adrian from Supervisor Desmond's office for getting Cody here today and making sure there was a smooth transition and looking out for our committee and the chamber. We really appreciate that, Adrian, and we've enjoyed having you as part of our committee and part of the chamber.
Well, thank you. And I just want to wish everybody on behalf of Jim Desmond a very safe and prosperous new year. He will be still an advocate for small business and for making sure our students get well educated in school. So it's been a pleasure working with your group, and I do live in the area, so I will still be very much a part of lovely Carlsbad. And also wanted to introduce Cody Patterson. And if he can introduce himself. We all work and serve the county, and we all serve all our constituents. So welcome, Cody. And why don't you say a couple of introduction words?
Thank you so much, Adrian. We really appreciate the introduction. We're having a very rapid transition here. In certain regards, it's a little bit complicated, the transition. In certain regards, your voters are still represented by your former supervisor for a while. All of our offices have pretty much agreed to this month make the transition. So I appreciate Adrian sort of taking the initiative to make this introduction. We have been active in the North County Chamber. And so we're definitely well appraised of these. The supervisor herself is a longtime resident of Encinitas. And I've spent a lot of time in Carlsbad. I'm a native of La Jolla, but really consider the entire San Diego coast my home. We sit on Sandag and Carlsbad. I was just talking to the mayor of Del Mar, the new mayor of Del Mar, and some of these coastal cities will receive some of the most per capita investments from Sandag of any of the communities in the region. One of the things we're really excited about is trenching, Carlsbad trenching, as Mayor Hall indicated, could really have a transformative impact on your communities. And we're excited about that, as well as the Del Mar realignment, which will really transform that Del Mar coastline into really one of our region's most attractive coastal recreation resources. So a lot of exciting things happening in the North Coast. We are here to listen, really. I'm not here to tell Carlsbad folks what to think or what to do. We're here to listen to your concerns and make sure that they're reflected in our policy making at the county. And we will obviously be working with Desmond's office as well. They're the office most familiar with these communities and their needs in relation to the county. So I'm excited to continue to work with Adrian on these issues. So I'd like to coordinate with leadership here to make sure that the supervisor is a regular attendee. I am open to doing that, and we're in contact. So it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. We will be, I will be a regular attendee here. So you'll see a lot more of me in the coming months.
Thank you very much, Cody. I don't think we have any questions, so we're going to move on to Jonathan from Senator Bates' office. Is Jonathan here? We're not going to move on to Jonathan because Jonathan is not here. So we are now going to move on to, I don't believe Glenn is here either. So we're going to move on to Kyle from Mike Levin's office. Hopefully he has his paper right in front of him and is ready to roll. Kyle?
Good morning. Yes. Hello. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you're all healthy and safe. Congressman Levin is heading back to Washington this month. Going to work on a number of bills that he hopefully can get passed through the House, some of his bills that he's introduced. But looking back last month, even though December is usually quiet, we did get Congressman Levin's bill, the Remote Act, into law, not just past the House, but into law. That Remote Act provides education benefits for veterans amid the challenges brought on by the pandemic, regarding remote learning and things like that. He also last month introduced the Military Dependents School Meal Eligibility Act. That basically kind of closes loopholes. It's a bipartisan bill that closes loopholes for military families to be able to qualify for school meal programs. So that's very important as well. And he also led a letter to the CPUC, California Public Utilities Commission, that urged them to reconsider their recently adopted changes, or recently proposed, I should say, not adopted, to net energy metering policies that would essentially disincentivize the continued adoption of rooftop solar that we know is so vital here. So that's some of the most recent legislation. I do want to step back. I'll just take the opportunity since we're at the beginning of the year. I wanted to share some quick highlights of the work from the last year that Congressman Levin and our office here locally were able to do over this past year. So as you all know, as we started 2021, there was still some more help needed for struggling families. Frontline workers needed more support, and our local schools and businesses were still having problems. So Congress passed the American Rescue Plan. I think you're all familiar with that. I've talked about it before. That's the one that extended the child tax credit, which was the largest middle-class tax cut in history, and also other relief programs. But for our district here, it provided more than $350 million to families and organizations. The American Rescue Plan provided $350 million to families here in the 49th Congressional District, help them get through, the dark January and February of last year. So moving forward through the rest of the year, I've also talked about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that passed and became law. I don't need to go into the detail of that because I've gone into the detail the last couple of meetings, but providing for long-term economic growth. And then specifically to the congressman, some of his legislative accomplishments just in the last year. He introduced 31 pieces of legislation. 7 of those actually passed the House, and 2 of them became law. 2 congressman's bills became law, and that's on top of the 16 bills that were signed into law during the previous 116th Congress. And then just finally, here at our office, the office in Oceanside and Dana Point that I help run, we're able to help more than 1,100 constituents with issues involving federal agencies. And we help those folks, in addition to, some of them don't have monetary value, but others do. And $13.4 million was returned from the federal government to local folks. And that includes $9.5 million for small businesses, for things like helping SBA loans. So I mentioned that to highly encourage you all, as I've said before, to reach out to me or our office if you or anyone you know is having a problem with a federal agency. We're here to be able to help you when you can have a problem with Social Security, veterans, IRS, any federal agency. We do this day in, day out. So we look forward to continue doing that important work and passing important legislation. With that, I'll pass it on back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyle. And I can give a testimonial to Congressman Levin's office. I've turned a couple of my clients and small business owner clients onto the Congressman's office for help in these tough times over the last year, and the responsiveness and the follow through has been remarkable. So hats off to Congressman Levin and his whole team, because what he's saying is true. I've seen it in person with some of my clients. It's really been remarkable how they've helped. So thank you for that. And we're going to jump to Brett, get an update on the Chamber of Commerce. He might know a little something.
Just a couple items for the chamber. First of all, it's the new year, so everybody needs to make sure they have updated labor law posters for their offices. And if you don't already have those and have easy access to one, we have them available. You can purchase them through us for a pretty reasonable rate on our website. You can do that. And then also I wanted to remind everybody that the Gift Carlsbad program that we've been running is still active and going. It wasn't just for the holidays, it's still up and running. giftcarlsbad.com, and if you make a gift card purchase, it's an electronic gift card, you get bonuses. So if you purchase, I think it's a $40 gift card, you get a $10 bonus. A $75 gift card, you get a $25 bonus, and a $100 gift card, you get a $40 bonus. So that's a pretty good bonus money. And you can use it to any of the merchants who are participating. And every day the merchants are growing. It's growing slower than I wanted, but it is growing. And there's no expiration on the gift card you purchase. The bonus gift card you have to use within 90 days. But like I said, you can use it for any of the participating merchants. So go to giftcarlsbad.com, check out how many are up there right now, and go make some purchases and support our local business. And so we did have one, I don't want to overstate this. I wanted to call it a COVID casualty, but that probably isn't very sensitive to say it that way. Because of a COVID spike, our host for our happy hour in this month in January had to cancel on us last minute. So our happy hour in-person networking for January got canceled. We hope to resume with our regularly scheduled networking in February, but it is what it is right now, and there's not much we could do about it on this kind of short notice. So be that as it may. Otherwise, yeah, we're here. We're looking forward to continuing on advocating for small business here in 2022.
All right, thank you, Brett. Any comments from the peanut gallery? Any comments before we close it out? Okay, I don't see any hands or any comments. So we're gonna have our next meeting February 2nd at 7:30. Wish everybody a very happy new year and a wonderful January. And thanks for tolerating my replacement of Haley. I know it's a downgrade, as I said, but it's my pleasure to be here and I enjoy it. And thank you all. Have a great January.
Bye, everybody. Goodbye.
Like your style, buddy.
Thanks.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.
Guys.
Happy New Year.
Great job.